What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into Breaking Bet. I got my guy John Bollman back. Our schedules have been a little hectic where we can't get on the same page, but we finally got it. It's Super Regional Weekend. It was an absolute chaos merchant last week in the regionals. Some of our big bets went down. Some of these big upsets come through. It was just chaos in a bottle. One of the biggest, craziest regionals that I feel like we've seen in years. And John, this is a big week ahead. Some unlikely matchups, some really good spots to take some dogs, and maybe a couple favorites that look like they have a really good shot to sweep this weekend.
Yeah, we got a fun Super Regionals coming up. A lot of SEC teams, which, I think we kind of expected. And then, a couple mid-majors, which, maybe a few people expected, but not many. But yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend. We got a lot of baseball coming.
So, we did this last weekend, really, where we're previewing what we expected to see in the regionals, maybe some teams that you're looking out for, maybe how the format's going to play. Anybody that really hasn't watched the sport or is just tuning in, I think most people would probably agree the regionals is the hardest weekend. Because if you lose that first game, then you got to claw back and win four more. It's a lot of pitching, takes a lot of toll on your pitching staff. But I think the super regionals are the easiest weekend in the sense that other than the College World Series finals, it's the only series in the postseason that mimics what you see during the regular season. This is a true best of three game series. You're going to be able to sort of get back to what you do on a regular week-to-week basis. I mean, obviously, some of the bleed over from last week, might affect how teams have to go with the rotations. But for the most part, you're playing a best two of three, and you're going about it like it's a normal week in conference.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it is, like you said, like it is really the only thing that mimics the regular season, with these series, 3-game series, and they're at the higher seeds stadium as opposed to the College World Series final, which is obviously in Omaha. So it is interesting to see how, that plays out. But yeah, regionals is definitely very hard to get through. I mean, that's why we see a lot of these, higher seeds, the top 2 seeds in the entire tournament this year, not make it through. And we saw them both get exposed and kind of what we expected all year to happen. Maybe not in the regionals, but, if not in the super regionals or the early College World Series. So, yeah, we should have some interesting baseball this weekend, and, it's just got to win a series.
So let's start out with the first series in Morgantown. And guys, so there's 8 total matchups, 4 of which will be on Friday, game 1, and then the next 4 will be on Saturday, game 1. So it goes Friday to Sunday, and then Saturday to Monday, if necessary. So this is what we're previewing for. This is a Friday matchup. Well, it's not in order necessarily in terms of Friday and Saturday, but we could call it out. So Morgantown, West Virginia, Cal Poly. Now, guys, of course, I like to do this. Keep all the odds on one book. I obviously would advise shopping around, but this is DraftKings for simplicity's sake. West Virginia minus 450 against Cal Poly. It actually just came down. It's now West Virginia minus 400, Cal Poly 280. I only put this up like 30 minutes ago. But in any case, John, obviously, West Virginia had a hard-fought region win last week. It was maybe the most entertaining region of the entire week. It was unbelievable from just a pure baseball entertainment perspective. The Mountaineers played sloppy. Sloppy defense. Pitching was sloppy, not typically what we've seen from them this year. They just had to rely on a lot of crazy things to happen. What kind of chance do you give Cal Poly to come in and steal this super regional?
I mean, definitely a good chance. I think it's way better than a plus 300. Like you said, they weren't playing great all weekend. Their top 2 pitchers who were very good weren't pitching great. I still don't think Kentucky's a very good team. West Virginia was making, a lot of errors, a lot of walks, hit by pitches, free bases just in general. And Cal Poly has that 1-2 punch. Griffin Ness going likely in game one. I don't know if they've announced starting pitchers yet, but he dominated last outing in the regionals. And, he didn't have the best regular season, but seemed like whenever, he needed to show up, he has. Cal Poly's a good team, man. Like West Virginia, I think a lot of people are getting fooled by West Virginia. Not like I'm not saying they're not good, but I think a lot of people are seeing like, okay, home field advantage. Cal Poly's playing at this 9 a.m. Local time. Like they're gonna go in. It's gonna be a tough situation for them. I think they're gonna be ready. I think if you were gonna take a play here, it would definitely have to be Cal Poly plus 300.
Let me ask you a question. Does this make more sense? Because I'm firing on it. First of all, I think Cal Poly's got the advantage game one. It looks like it's going to be Griffin Ness against Chance and Cole. So now we're talking about the bleed over from Monday. So West Virginia threw Max Yell on game one Friday last week. Not good. Was not good at all. Then they piggybacked with Ian Korn. Then on the Monday game, they threw Yell, who did much better, and Korn again. So they both threw Friday and Monday. So that in turn had to say, well, Steve Saban is not going to throw Max Yell 3 days and 3 times in 7 days. So now their Sunday starter Chance and Cole, who's also great. Like West Virginia, they made it because they have arguably the best 1-2-3 punch in the entire country. If not they have one of. But Cole's been great this year. So it's going to be Cole on Friday, tomorrow, against, I think, Griffin Ness. So let me ask you the strategy. I'm already booking Cal Poly for game one. I like it, Cal Poly. They're 2-1 right now. We're going to get more into the games later. But in this short of a stretch, it's kind of how you're going to piece it together and handicap it. So you're getting Cal Poly in that 3-1 neighborhood. But for game one, they're 2-1. I think their best chance to win a game is tomorrow with Griffin Ness on the mound. West Virginia just fought a gauntlet of a series. So I think Cal Poly game one at plus 200 with Griffin Ness, who, by the way, has been money this year. Griffin Ness is already one of the most underrated pitchers in the country, one of the top mid-major pitchers. He didn't have a great year overall, but he's been money as of late. He's only allowed 7 earned runs in his last 4 starts. That's I think it was 28 innings, and he's got 32 Ks. He's been money the last 4 starts. So you're getting plus 200 there. I think that's the play. Instead of taking the 300 where you have to rely on them to win 2 games. But then if they win, I think you're in good shape there. And if they lose, then you can bet them to win game 2 with Turnquist on the mound. So that way you don't have to lay 300 for them to have to win 2 games. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
in theory, you could be putting down an extra. You could be putting down an extra unit if they lose game 1, and you're going to chase in game 2. Whereas if you put 1 unit down to get 280, but I think they realistically have a chance to win at least one of the first 2 games.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the other thing to think about is if it does go 3 games, Cal Poly is likely going to be in the same area, plus 200 to win the game. So, with that sense, play plus 200 twice would be 4 units. And then say you play it all 3 games would be 3 units. So essentially ends up being the same thing. If you do play it that way, but at least you get to see the games and how it unfolds as opposed to betting it pre series.
Because they could realistically get boat race tomorrow. Cal Poly could be flat. I think for me, I'd rather bet this game by game. Look, I like what Griffin Ness has done. Cal Poly's tough. It's kind of crazy that, look, I think some of us kind of felt like UCLA was beatable, right? Like we weren't sold what we've been seeing, especially with the Redeman injury. And, they were missing guys and they just didn't have continuity. They were relying on comebacks and heroics and they played nobody for most of the year. So it's not a shock to see them get eliminated, but in their own region, which was very winnable, is a shock. But then for Cal Poly, they get through that region. They don't even have to play UCLA, which is, in my opinion, probably a bigger shock, or almost as big of a shock at least. But I think Cal Poly 3-1 is doable, but I would rather bet them game by game. And that all starts tomorrow with Griffin Ness.
I agree.
This is a good point from Craig. This is a very good point. I thank you, Craig, for bringing that up. So I see this on two fronts. People are saying, after how West Virginia won their region and then everybody singing Country Roads, which was unbelievable, it was amazing. The atmosphere, they get saddled with an early game, like in a viewership dream for a network for ESPN. And then Cal Poly West Coast team has to go east for what's essentially to them a 9 a.m. start time. So both teams get dicked with this start time here. So Craig asks, any concern with the early start time for Cal Poly?
I don't think so. I think they're going to be ready to play, to be honest. I think there's going to be a lot of, discourse about that. And, it's 9 a.m. local time. No, this is a super regional. They're going to be ready to play, man. I'm sure they're going to be fired up. I don't know if many of them are even asleep the night before. So I think they'll be ready.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I haven't put too much stock into that. I'm sure they got their body clocks adjusted, traveled a couple days ago. But, yeah, I think Cal Poly game one. That's where I'm looking. All right, Chapel Hill, UNC, USC. Minus 280 versus plus 210. John, it's very interesting, this super regional, because if you look at it, UNC just breezed through theirs. And credit for them, because not every host, not every favorite did that. And then you had USC, who drops game one, Texas State, huge plus money banger we hit. They didn't win the region. Fucking sickens me. But USC loses game one in heartbreaking fashion. Then they have to come back and win 4 straight, including beating A&M twice in a row. USC's offense has been a real concern for me. But this weekend, they put up 59 runs in 5 games. They averaged almost 12 runs a game last week. Their offense looks like it's coming to life. Granted, the UNC pitching staff's much better than what they're going to face this weekend. But, John, look, man, I think UNC ultimately is the better team. They have more experience. They've been here more frequently. They're at home. But this is too big of a number. Like, if we're going straight off the numbers, USC plus 210, especially when you consider they're throwing one of the top arms in the country this year in Mason Edwards in game one against Ryan Lynch. That line is plus 120 for USC, minus like 154 for UNC. But I got to think, if USC wins game one, the odds are going to do a dramatic flip. Do you bet USC out of the gate plus 210 and you go game one? Or are you taking one or the other?
No, and this is going to be a theme for me. I'm not getting into these series plays this year. I think there's value in being able to see the games, seeing who pitches, that sort of thing, who's hot, who's swinging it. So I'm staying away from this one as a series, and I'll leave it at that. Also, is Ryan Lynch confirmed starting? Do you know?
Yeah, that's what I've seen. I've seen Ryan Lynch is going here, and then DeCarro's going to come back for game 2. And it is interesting because USC had to play, until Monday. So they're kind of turned around a little bit, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be Edwards in this game. But I got to tell you, man, like, I think I'm at least taking USC game 1. It's like, let's remember, UNC had such a big advantage against Arizona last year at home in their own super regionals. Take game 1, and then they blew it. They had an opportunity to put the nail in the coffin. I think it was in game 2. They didn't do it, and then they let Arizona come win game 3. So, like, for us, how does that not stick? How does that not stick in their craw? How does that not stick in their memory where they're like, hey, we were in this position last year? And, like, look, USC's had a great year, and they have talent, but are they better than UNC? I don't think so. But, it's not always who's better. It's who's playing better ball, who's got the matchup advantage. I got to be honest, I'm not in love with UNC. I think their team was way better last year, but they're still a good ball club. They've had a lot of production in different areas. I'm tempted to take the plus 210, though I do think UNC rights the ship from last year and makes it out. So I think I'd probably roll with the game 1 here. But at the same time, like I'm not in a rush to bet minus 280. I'd rather see if USC wins game 1 with plus 120 with Mason Edwards against Ryan Lynch, and then maybe you come back on UNC at a better price if you want to take them to win the series. That's probably how I'd play if you like the Tar Heels to win this one. All right, let's go to Little Rock and Troy. Christ on a cross. For all of us with the Florida tickets, Florida was my biggest single position in my entire portfolio for this season. John and I talked about it off air. Path set up. The Red Sea parted. UCLA gets knocked out. Southern Miss gets knocked out. Florida would get to play Little Rock at home and then would have to play either West Virginia or Cal Poly in game 1 of Omaha. Either USC or one of USC and UNC would have been knocked out, and one of Ole Miss Auburn would have been knocked out. And the path was very favorable to get to the finals, but they fucked it up. Nevertheless, Troy pulls through, and it's going to be them in Little Rock. One of these mid-majors, they're going to Omaha, brother. Who's it going to be?
I think it's going to end up being Troy. That being said, I don't think you can take Little Rock easy. I mean, they beat some good teams. They've been playing well, in regionals. Troy, like we're saying, that they're 3 games above 500. They played some really good teams this year, which is how they ended up getting into the tournament, is because they're a tough schedule. But I think Little Rock's going to win at least one of these games. I'm just staying away from this this pre-series play again.
I'll be honest. I don't think, Little Rock's out of it here. Troy's good. Their offense was really hitting, but how much of that was just Florida absolutely imploding? Troy was done. Florida had it in the bag, and then they kind of choked. And Troy jumped on it. They did what they had to do. Obviously, props. Their offense was raking. Jimmy Janicki, I'm seeing him in my nightmares. But I don't love the Troy pitching. I think the Troy pitching did well in that last game because Florida they gave up. I think they were just out of it. You had some random mix after Hayden Smith who threw well to start, and then they were just shutting down. Guys with 6 ERAs were coming in and just mowing down Gators hitters who had scored 40 runs in the first 3 games. So, look, the thing is, Little Rock's offense, they don't do anything that jumps out at you. They hit 291 as a team, 58 home runs, 54 steals. Nothing crazy. They have one guy in double figures of home runs. Their pitching isn't unbelievable. Brandon Westmoreland, I mean, he's been great this year. But still, they play that type of game where they just hang around and then wait for you to make a mistake. So I think Troy probably ends up winning. And I think the price is a little bit too aggressive here. I don't think they're good enough to be warranting this kind of number, even against Little Rock. So I'd probably not bet Little Rock on the series, but I might take them game 1 plus 190. Troy played a long weekend, and they played a grueling weekend against Florida.
Yeah, they lost the first game.
Yeah, I think they might be, I'm going to say checked out, but I think they might have to get refocused. I think Little Rock's an interesting plus 190 pick. I don't think Troy's pitching is just that shutdown.
Do you know who's going for Troy in game 1?
Is it going to be Stubbs? Benjamin Stubbs?
That's what I was thinking.
That's what I was thinking too. Let me see. What was the last? I forget what game he threw. Stubbs threw 1 inning against Florida on Monday, but that was 15 pitches.
Probably get Saturday then.
About Tommy Egan, maybe. Probably be one of them. It would probably be one of Egan or Stubbs. Egan got lit up against Miami on, was it Sunday? I doubt Egan goes. Egan threw 67 pitches on Sunday. I don't think they're going to turn around for Friday. I think Stubbs might be a little bit more realistic because he only threw 15 pitches. Hayden Smith threw that Monday game. I just think process of elimination, the best chance would probably going to have to go to Benjamin Stubbs throughout game 1 for Troy. And then for Little Rock, I mean, it could be Brigden Parker or Brandon Westmoreland. I think Westmoreland's probably more realistic. Plus, he's had a good year. He's 3.12 ERA. So 98 innings this year. He's been a horse. So I would probably lean with Little Rock here. I think plus 190 is a good number. So a lot of these upsets, I think, are in play for this weekend.
Yeah, I agree.
But in any case, sort of like the USC UNC regional. If you like Troy, you're not betting minus 350. I don't care who they're playing. Little Rock, if they happen to win game 1, those odds are going to come down. It makes it a little bit more bettable. Maybe you throw it in a parlay. However you want to do it. Are you at all concerned about the Austin Super Regional price? Texas has been a favorite to win the College World Series, or in that tier since the preseason, and now they're pacing the top of the board in some books. Minus 330 against Oregon. Now, Texas looked good for most of last weekend. They had to get in a little bit of a fight with Santa Barbara to close it out, but nevertheless they did it. Oregon, in my opinion, had one of the easier regionals. They get through. Will Sanford's had a great year. He looks great this weekend. The number's pretty big. What kind of chance do you give Oregon here?
I mean, I think there's always a chance. We saw Texas last year at home against UTSA lose their super regional, that was in regionals, right?
Yeah, regionals.
Yeah, regionals. So we know Texas can lose at home. I did see a stat. I believe Texas is 14-1 in a home series the last 2 years. So this is a series they should win. I'm not very high on Oregon. They do have very good pitching at the front end of their series. Their ace and one or two good relievers. But this is Texas series to lose. They're at home, or I agree with you with Oregon. I mean, if they were facing a Dax Whitney in that regional, it would have been a lot more difficult, but Oregon State, wasn't hitting. You have Washington State and then Yale, I thought would put up a lot bigger of a fight. So I do think that was an easier regional. Texas should win this one.
I mean, from a betting standpoint, I'm not betting the price. I'm not parlaying it with anything. Like I have a position on Texas, from all year for them to win it all. So it doesn't make sense there. And in game 1, they're minus 230, and this is a Saturday 8:00 game. This is a minus 238 line for Texas. We'll get into this in a little bit here. And Oregon's plus 180. I mean, Dylan Volantis, that's end of story right there. Dylan Volantis. Especially if Texas gets to game 1, you got two cracks to close it out. I don't know if Will Sanford's going to go in game 1. That remains to be seen. I mean, if you're Mark Watzkowski, sorry, I'm butchering his name. But do you go with Sanford and go head-to-head against Volantis? Or do you try to hold them back for game 2 and still game 2 and push to a game 3? He threw last Saturday, so he'd be on a full week's rest.
Yeah, I think you got to go best on best. You got to win game 1 in these super regionals. Obviously, it's I think it's easier to win 2 games in a row in a super regional than it is to come out of the losers bracket losing game 1 of the regional. Mm-hmm. But that being said, game 1's essential. You want to win game 1. So I think they're going to go with their top guys.
I like Texas, man. Texas got to do it. This is the year for Texas to make this run. All right. One of the more interesting ones is Kansas against Oklahoma. One Big 12 team against one former Big 12 team. John, Oklahoma shocked the world. Unbelievable comeback against Georgia Tech. Can't say enough about it. So impressive. Skip Johnson, postseason pedigree. They're plus 135 here against Kansas. Kansas had a great weekend. I didn't bet them to win the region last week because I needed to wait and see it. I needed them to show me that they were capable of doing this. They answered the bell. They looked great. and they got down in a hole. They fought back, and they found a way to win. Minus 170 is not a bad number. Now, why I think this is interesting is because Oklahoma had to expend so much energy in pitching and Cam Johnson and LJ McCurious to get past Georgia Tech on Monday. They're having to start freshman Cord Rager in this first game. I think that's a significant advantage to Kansas. What kind of strength do you give Oklahoma to win a game or the series?
Like you said, their coach is very good. The craziest thing is they didn't even use Cam Johnson as a starter. He pitched on Monday, and I don't even think he recorded an out. And he's been their Friday night guy all season long. So that just shows kind of the 1,000 IQ move by their manager. But yeah, Cord Rager's been good. And Dom Vagali's likely going to go for Kansas, and he's been pitching great lately. His ERA won't show it, but he's been dominating. I think this is a Kansas series to lose. The only thing that worries me is if they're nervous or they think about getting to Omaha. Have they ever been to Omaha? I don't think so.
I think they made Omaha one time in 1993. They won 2 regionals, 93 and this year.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is uncharted territory for this program. I think it's going to be absolutely packed in that stadium. Like I said, the only thing that worries me would be if the nerves. Being at home, I think it's a little more nerve-wracking too. And Oklahoma's got absolutely nothing to lose after beating Georgia Tech twice and coming in here. So, and they can put some pressure on you. And Kansas wasn't very clean, even though they were hitting and winning. So, I do think Oklahoma would win one, maybe even win this series.
I'm not writing off Oklahoma, but I'll tell you what I would do, and this is why it's interesting, right? So it's kind of hard not to talk about the game ones with this, but Kansas right now is minus 160 with Oklahoma being plus 124. Cord Rager and probably Don Bagley, minus 160. Right? Let's say Kansas wins that game 1. That super regional price goes from minus 170 to probably well into the high 2s. So my thing is I would probably still rather bet Kansas game 1 and then try and pick off a game where I think Oklahoma might steal, which would, of course, have to be game 2. Or do you try and gamble and go Kansas to win the super regional? And if they win game 1, you're sitting on a pretty ticket, and then you have 2 cracks to get it done. Or do you definitely think Oklahoma gets 1?
No, I think we stay away here. Because then the other thing is that if this does go to game 3, I don't think Kansas will be favored that heavily. I think if Oklahoma gets 1, it'll be close to maybe minus 140-ish. So unless you think Kansas is going to win both games, I wouldn't take this play.
I do like Kansas minus 160, though. Game 1, Cord Rager, he hasn't really been that great. He was good against the Citadel, got lit up against Tennessee the week before. He got touched against Arkansas, Florida, Auburn, the 3 outings prior. Like, he really hasn't been that sharp. So I think I'm all on Kansas for game 1 here. All right. This is one of my favorite super regionals, Auburn, Ole Miss. 2 SEC teams that did not play each other this year. John, what's stopping us from taking Ole Miss here?
Yeah, I agree. I think I would lean with his numbers. I would lean Ole Miss. Like if this was even, I'd probably lean Auburn. But Auburn looked terrible. I mean, they lost the first game to Milwaukee. Then yeah, they came back and beat them twice. But their pitching is their strength, and their pitching looked terrible. So Ole Miss, we know Hunter Elliott's. He's been terrible as well. Honestly, we know he's capable of pitching well, especially in the postseason. But Ole Miss does have some solid pitching depth as well. And, they played well through their regional. So I think this one's should be a lot closer to even. So if I were going to play a regional or a team to win a super region here, it would be Ole Miss.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? This is interesting. So Ole Miss is plus 155. Again, guys, this is DraftKings. Shop around. Numbers are going to be different. But Ole Miss is plus 155 here to win 2 games, to win the Super Regional matchup. But on tomorrow night's game, they're plus 140 to win with Hunter Elliott against Andreas Alvarez. That's the confirmed starter, Alvarez. Why would we take plus 155 at a barely better number to win 2 games as opposed to plus 140 to win 1 game? Because if you take plus 140 first game and they end up losing, that Super Regional price is going to be much bigger heading into game 2. So I think if you like Ole Miss, you're better off just taking them game 1. Because if they lose, you're going to get a better number later. And if they win, if they win game 1, then you're still not guaranteed to cash the ticket when you take plus 155. But you would be if you took plus 140 in game 1. And here's the thing, like Hunter Elliott hasn't been great this year, but this guy was a pivotal part in that 2022 title run. He was a huge part. Now he's a seasoned senior vet. Like, this is the guy that's commanding the staff. I think he can get this done in game 1. I think, look, Auburn's a great team. I have nothing against Auburn. If you remember for our preseason show, they were just on the cusp of outside my Omaha 8, like right there. Like it was Georgia Tech and Auburn as like the 2 teams right after. I think they could definitely win. Like Auburn played a shit series last week. They played terrible last weekend. They only won probably because they played Milwaukee. Ole Miss is different, man. Ole Miss, I talked about on a couple of different forums, and this podcast included last weekend. I thought Ole Miss was the biggest dark horse in the field of 64, sort of like how they were in 2022. So I now have a decent position on Ole Miss to win it all. Because, hey, if they win this weekend, then once you get into Omaha, who knows? You win 1 game, you go to the winner's bracket. And then they have pitching. They have Townsend. Townsend didn't have a great start last weekend, but this is a first-rounder. You have Taylor Rabe threw a great start last week. He's had a good year. You got bullpen options. The biggest what-if for Ole Miss, in my opinion, this is what I mentioned. This is why I did so high variance. Like, that's why I didn't really hammer them before the regional started, because I had to make sure they got past Cole Carlin in that ASU game 1. But this is a team that is incredibly high variance. And when they play to the higher side of their variance and they're more consistent, they cut down on the mistakes, the strikeouts, the home runs allowed. This team is as dangerous as anybody in the field. Anybody. Ole Miss is a real sleeper. And Auburn's a great team. And Auburn can very well win this series this weekend. But Ole Miss is dangerous. If Ole Miss starts really playing their ball, and I'll be honest, they had one of the toughest regionals last week. I don't even think they played well. They were sloppy. They made a lot of mistakes. These games went in extra innings when they could have ended it earlier, and they still won. So, look, man, I think Ole Miss is a sleeper. I think this is the best number out there to take it to win it all. Like, if you don't have any piece on Ole Miss, you're getting them in the 20-1 bucket, a little bit higher, maybe like 22-1. This is the team to fire on. If you don't have a piece, I would take it now. Because if they win this week, you're going to be cut in half, maybe more. I think Ole Miss is a real sleeper. They have 3 good pitchers, starters. They have some good bullpen guys. They have an offense that can hit the shit out of the ball, 220 homer guys. They have guys that just show up, and they have a coach that's got the pedigree that won a national title, a College World Series title in 2022. Dangerous. Very dangerous. All right. Last super regional. Tuscaloosa versus St. John's. My Johnnies. My alma mater. So proud of these boys. I mean, with Georgia Tech getting clipped, John, with the Yellow Jackets losing, where like when these brackets dropped and the top right, it was Georgia Tech, and then the biggest threat would be Bama, OK State, maybe either Arkansas or Kansas. It's like, God, that's why we think Georgia Tech was going to walk to the final 4 at least on that side. Buddy, am I going crazy here to think my Johnnies are going to pull this goddamn upset off?
I mean, they definitely can. I wouldn't be surprised if they win at least one game. Alabama, they didn't. It seemed like on paper they were going to have a tougher regional, but USC Upstate wasn't playing great. Oklahoma State kind of showed, how they usually show in regionals. They beat Upstate by 2. They beat Oklahoma State by 2. It didn't seem like that tough for regional. St. John's beat Florida State twice, both by 1 run. I think they're more than capable of winning a game here. I definitely think there's value in them. But Alabama's heavy favorite for a reason as well. They've got a very good starting rotation. It's just their bullpen that's pretty brutal. I wouldn't be surprised if it would take one.
I mean, there's no betting opportunity on Alabama this weekend. They're minus 600 here. They're minus 425 game one. Like, you'd have to take a run line, maybe look at a team total, something like that. There's not a lot of betting opportunity. And I'm not doing this for the number. Like, look, maybe it's a bit of a homer pick, but I like St. John's. Liam O'Leary's been great this year. Like they have this it factor right now. Liam O'Leary's been great. Like, they've gotten some good bullpen performances. Adam Agresti's been a dude. Like, their lineup's been good. John LeGrand's been setting the tone, playing some great center field. Like, plus 300 at this point in the region. And I like Bama. Listen, I think Alabama is probably one of the more underrated teams, despite being the number 7 overall seed. I think a lot of these other teams they're more visually appealing. They get more hype, more juice. Like, Alabama's good. And I think for the same reason, Georgia Tech being out, Alabama's not a bad shot to win it all either. They're 16-1. I mean, if they win this series and they play either Kansas or Oklahoma next week in Omaha for the first game, like, I think Alabama's, just based on matchup and path, is very interesting. But I don't know. I want St. John's to win. Alabama will probably win. I took a little sprinkle on St. John's to win it all for fun. But I think, honestly, though, St. John's plus 300 with Liam O'Leary on the mound. Like, Tyler Fay, he's solid. Like, they have solid starters, but I don't think they're shut down. Like, I don't think Alabama's pitching is shut down. I think it's good enough when their offense is scoring. And it's no slight to Bama, because I think Bama's a good program. They have a good shot this year to make a deep run. I just think, at least for game one, minus 425 is interesting. Like, St. John's is coming in with that juice. They're coming in hype. They have nothing to lose. They won a regional as a 4 seed. They went into Tallahassee. They took Florida State's region. They're playing with house money right now. I mean, I like St. John's for game one, man. Tyler Fay, is probably going to be the starter. He's got a 4.7 ERA. He's got a lot of strikeouts this year. He's allowed 20 home runs. 20. One starting pitcher has allowed 20 home runs this year. Tyler Fay. That is insane. That's some shit that you see from the worst starters in the MLB that allow 20 home runs. That's a lot of long balls. Why can't St. John shock the world, Liam O'Leary, in game one, plus 300? Saturday night. Why not? Johnny up, baby. Give me that 3-1. You heard? Game one matchups, Fridays. We talked a lot about this, so we'll breeze through these. Cal Poly 2-1 against West Virginia, minus 270. John, give me the Mustangs. Griffin Ness on the mound, 2-1. I think if Cal Poly's got their best chance to win, it's with Griffin Ness on the mound against Chance and Cole. Give me Cal Poly.
Yeah, I agree. I also like the under here. I think Ness will keep it low. I think West Virginia's pitching will keep it low too. The only thing that worries me is if they're not playing clean. If we get some errors, booting some balls around. But I still like the under and Cal Poly.
Yeah, Cal Poly 2-1. I think game one's – there's a lot of game one upsets brewing. I think, if you're interested in throwing a little, some action on, a little parleysy, some of these dogs parlay, it's going to be a little nice payout if you're in the parlay game. I'll probably do it. USC plus 120 at UNC, minus 154. Low total of 9 flat. Mason Edwards via Ryan Lynch.
Yeah, I mean, this one, the more I think about it, I think I'm leaning USC just because the pressure's on UNC here. We've seen them get to super regionals. I mean, last year they won game one and then lost the next 2 at home. Also Lynch is going to Dakar. Dakar actually hasn't been great, but it seems like UNC. I mean, UNC won't be afraid to use their relievers also. Who they've got.
Hayden Glauber's been great, one of the best freshmen.
Yeah, McDuffie. I mean, they've got a very good bullpen, which is probably the best asset for UNC. But in these 3-game series, your bullpen doesn't necessarily get to show as it would in a regionals or a double elimination the College World Series. So the more I think about it, the more I'm leaning towards USC.
Yeah, I'm on USC too. I think if there's one game USC wins, it's this one. Mason Edwards on the mound. He didn't have a great start against Lamar.
Yeah, I was going to say he was terrible against Lamar.
Yeah, but I mean, plus money with Mason Edwards, Ryan Lynch. I like Ryan Lynch, but he hasn't been great this year. I think this is the game you have to win it for USC. You have to win this one. Little Rock, plus 190 against Troy, 250. I'm staying with the dog here, plus 190, John. I mean, if it's Moreland, it's Westmoreland. I just don't think any starters on Troy are that great. I think they had a good outing against Florida's offense on Monday. Florida, once they gave up that big inning, it was it. They were flat. I think probably it's going to be Benjamin Stubbs. I still don't think that warrants minus 250. I think Little Rock's interesting. I wouldn't parlay it. I maybe half unit sprinkle on plus 190, but I'd probably lean with Little Rock here.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I'd lean Little Rock. Troy, once again, if Troy were, say, minus 150, I think I would go with Troy, but I don't think this should be minus 250 favorites here. I think this is going to be a good series. And Little Rock, I think people will see that name and see Troy as, the Sun Belt team and, kind of look over Little Rock here. But I like them at plus money. What do you think about the total here? If it is, say it's Stubbs and Westmoreland.
I think this is a chance to get over.
Yeah,
I think this has a chance to be like a 7-5, 8-4, kind of game. I think the total is a touch low, very touch. I think it's gonna be between that 10 and a half and 11 and a half. But I could see it hitting 12 for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I mean, Troy every game had at least 12 runs scored. I mean, they had a lot of very high scoring games, and then Little Rock as well. Yeah, I mean, Little Rock had more lower scoring games, but that regional wasn't having, super high scoring. 7-4 against Southern Miss, 8-6 against Jacksonville State, and 6-3 against Jacksonville State. So, yeah, I guess I would lean over too, but I've been thinking about that one.
Yeah, that's interesting. Give me Little Cock for the win. Ole Miss, the nightcap of these Friday games, plus 140. Just extensively talked about it. I think the plus 140 is the way to go. Hunter Elliott, Andres Alvarez is good, man. I like Auburn. They're good. They're not like Alabama. They're not sexy. They don't get like the wagon vibe like a Georgia does or a Georgia Tech did. But they're a good ball club. They had a bad weekend last weekend. I don't think that kind of thing happens again. But that doesn't mean they can't play a good series or a good game and lose. I just think you're betting on the higher side of the variance with Ole Miss, plus the price. We talked about it. Ole Miss is high variance, John. That's why I think plus 140 is good, because if they're playing well, they have a good shot to win.
Yeah, I like Ole Miss here too. I think it's good value. I think Auburn's probably the better team overall, but they did not look like it in regionals. They struggled a bit. I think they could be feeling some pressure. I like Ole Miss at plus money.
Yeah, I do too. All right, well, on to Saturday here. Mississippi State, Georgia Tech. So one thing we didn't mention, guys, and this is completely opinionated. I personally think it was ridiculous. It was terrible. Let the kids play. Trey Phelps and head coach Wes Johnson will not be available for game one. Trey Phelps, in a very well-pitched game by the Liberty closer. Trey Phelps in the bottom of the seventh took the lead with a 2-run towering shot. And it looked like he turned to the Liberty dugout, may have chirped him, but it didn't look egregious. Gets thrown out. And then Wes Johnson, defending his player, also gets thrown out. So not only did they miss the rest of that game, but now they're out for game 1 here. That's big. You lose your coach and one of your best bats. That's shitty part of the sport. That's not a good look for the sport. I don't like it, but regardless, here's where we're at. Georgia minus 130 should be Joey Volchko on the mound. I haven't really seen a designation on Mississippi State. You would think it's Thomas Valinkis. McPherson, Ryan McPherson, I think, through last Sunday.
Yeah.
I think it'd probably be Valinkis. I don't think they moved Duke Stone up for this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he'll end up going, and McPherson will be if it goes to game 3, he'll be there. Or maybe even if they lose game 1, he'll pitch game 2. But this is a tough one for me, man. Georgia, I think, is probably the better team, but last year, same idea. They lost in their region at home. I believe it was to Duke in their region. They were one of the better teams in the nation, kind of came out of nowhere. So yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one for me. I've been going back and forth on this one. I think I have to play it.
I like Georgia. I think
Georgia also beat them 4 times this year already, right? They swept them.
Yeah, and then they did sweep them in the regular season
and beat them in the SEC tournament.
But I got news for you, dude. Like, I think Mississippi State's good. Mississippi State's got a chance. Like, they had a weird year. They had this year where they were really good to start the year. They were one of the better teams. They were, like, in that tier with – like, that tier had Georgia Tech, Texas, Georgia Tech, Texas, UCLA, maybe Mississippi State was in that region or right there in that next tier. And then they lose McPherson. They go on a little bit of a drought, and they started getting it together to end the year. McPherson's back in. That's a big reacquisition. I think if Mississippi State gets one, it's going to be here. So I don't think it's a bad play to take Mississippi State, especially without Wes Johnson or Phelps. And it's Joey Volchko most likely against Thomas Valinkis. Valinkis is the advantage for sure. That kid's going to be a top 10 pick next year. So, like, all the arrows would say if Mississippi State was going to get a game, it's going to be this one. So I don't hate that. I have a lot tied up in Georgia on the futures market as well. I just feel like I can't bet against Georgia, though.
This is a tough one for me for sure. Been going back and forth on it. Valinkis did pitch 7 1/3, only giving up 2 runs against Georgia when they faced him, though. But they definitely lost that game.
He's good, man. He's going to be a top 10 pick next year for a reason. And I get it. You want to take Mississippi State because you think this is the best chance. I don't hate that. I think that's a solid handicap, and I think that's very reasonable. Valinkis, he's been great this year. But I just think, Georgia is a different animal. Like, I think Liberty's closer took them by surprise. Liberty's pitching did a great job last week, by the way. They really held down the Georgia offense. The one thing where I think Valinkis might struggle, he's going to have 12 home runs this year against a team that's hit the most home runs in the country. That's really where you can get him. And that might be for like a 3-run shot that creates enough of a difference. I don't know if Georgia sweeps them. Maybe it's 3. Maybe Mississippi State gets 1 and Georgia comes back for 2 and 3. But if you're Georgia, this is your year, man. You've never had a better chance than this year. Like, you've had good teams in the past. You had a good team last year. You had a great team 2 years ago. But the difference was you couldn't pitch. Like, this year, there's some question marks about the pitching. But in terms of talent, the talent's there. This is your year for Georgia. I think this is their year to make that run. So I would go Georgia, but to be honest, that's more of just because I want them to win and I don't want to bet against them. But I think off straight handicap analysis, Mississippi State's probably the better pick just because of if they get one, it's probably this one. All right, John. Oklahoma plus 124, Kansas minus 160. It's easy for me. I'm not betting on Cord Rager. I like Kansas minus 160, Don Vagley and company at home.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I like Kansas as well.
All right, Oregon at Texas. Maybe they go Will Sanford, Oregon. That's their guy against Dylan Volantis, superstar. One big thing for Oregon, their offense isn't great, but they hit for power. 104 home runs. They got a couple guys that are really doing damage. How much of it is them playing in the Big Ten? I think Oregon's interesting at the number, but I'm not betting against Texas. I'm not betting against Dylan Volantis. I like Texas in a parlay here at minus 238. This is probably the only sort of game series action I would bet them this weekend is Dylan Volantis day.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Texas. I saw minus 2.5 for the run line. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, so I don't really love the run line. Not sure if I want to bet on Alabama though. I'm trying to figure out a way to play this, but I definitely want Texas involved.
I'm going St. John's plus 300. Liam O'Leary on the bump against Tyler Fay, who's allowed 20 ding dongs. St. John's 300 is gross.
So I was looking at this, I might go St. John's run line, depending on what it looks like.
Probably 3.5.
Yeah, yes. I was guessing 3.5. And then, or you could parlay Alabama and Texas. You could get it around minus 130. So I think those are the two options. To be honest, I'm not totally sure which one I'm going with yet. I do want to see that run line first, see what it's at. But that's what I'm thinking.
All right, John. Predictions, College World Series. Well, the field has changed, but who's going?
Yeah, I mean, my only future to win the actual College World Series is Texas. So I'm hoping that they do it. I'm sticking with Texas there. That being said, the other side of the bracket's looking pretty wide open.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if like an Ole Miss gets in there. I'm sticking with Texas.
Texas is like the preseason pick for me. Texas and Florida were my two big positions. And obviously I want Texas to win. But I got to be honest, I don't know if Texas would beat Georgia in that first game. Let's say Texas and Georgia both get out this weekend and they pass the test. And they face each other, and it's great for TV, but it's tough for our bets because or at least for me, because I have positions on both. That first game, Volantis and Texas against Georgia in Omaha in the Schwab. Of course, Texas could win that game with Volantis pitching, but I don't know if I would bet against Georgia if they continue to swing the bats like they have been. I think I'm going to go Georgia, and I hate to do it, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to go Georgia on the right side. I'm going to go Ole Miss on the left side. I think I'll put it to you this way. Let me say this. I think the winner of the Ole Miss-Auburn series represents the left side of the bracket. I think the winner of the Ole Miss-Auburn series will be in the finals on the left side of the bracket.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Let's see it. Guys, thank you so much for locking in with us. Let's have a great weekend. Let's win some money, and we'll see you next time here on Breaking Bet.